Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mecha Dragon. I am Will, and this is Bob. And today we're talking about the first episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And it's exciting to have you back on the show, Bob. Welcome back. It has been
Glad to be back.
it's been like a couple years, I think, since you were on. You were like on like two Christmases ago when we did an episode on our audio podcast about R2D2, if I
Has
recall
it been that
correctly.
long?
It was two Christmases ago. I know that for sure.
Oh my.
Yeah, and here we are at the end of March in 2021. So, but yeah, so I wanted to start. I wanted to start today with, since this is the very first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, kind of a brief, like, general impressions, non-spoilery general impressions of the show and what you thought. So what did you think of this first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Bob?
I thought it was great. There was a lot of groundwork for what was coming up for the rest of the series. You get to see some of the more personal human sides of some of our main characters, and it was a lot of great acting from some of our main characters. So you just really start that emotional connection that you need throughout a series to care about those main characters.
Yeah, this episode was like a lot of setup, but I think it's setup that we needed. And it really it spent a lot of time on the characters, well, Sam and Bucky, and where they are in their lives, and even though a lot of those scenes were kind of slow, maybe in some objective sense, it was more like giving it room to breathe. It was I was not bored at any point with the slower scenes, is what I'm saying.
Well,
And
yeah, they seem to go back and forth between really intense action and a slower, more emotional connecting with these people kind of scene.
yeah, like just more intimate, like personal moments. And I Sam Falcon, is probably the Avenger, one of the few Avengers who's basically a regular person. I mean, other than the fact that he's got, this Falcon suit and he can do all this stuff, and he's a great guy and all that. He's the most like a regular person of all the Avengers. I mean, I would say probably him, Scott Lang, Ant-Man, uh, and
Rhodey.
uh, and and Rhodey, basically. Those
Yep.
are like, and Hawkeye. Uh, those are the most like normal, like regular people. I would even put Rhodey as being like a little bit less of a normal person, just because he does get the like the Iron Man suit.
Well, again, under the suit, he's just a regular dude.
That's true. That's true. I mean, so it is interesting to see, sort of the real life stuff that these guys have to deal with, because these guys are not Thor, to where they're just like hitched a ride on a spaceship and it's like, whatever Thor's gonna be up to now. He's not
Yeah,
Hulk and whatever Hulk is into.
yeah, they
Eating
can't
his
take a missile to the face and then go have a beer after, you know?
right, exactly. So without saying spoilers, I mean, there was quite an amazing action set piece in this episode pretty early on, where it was just, I mean, it was at a level that typically you only see in feature films, in an MCU film. It's like not a TV-esque action sequence. I mean, there's some great TV and there's some great action in TV, but this was a whole nother level.
Yeah, they probably spent more on that initial fight sequence than a lot of shows spend on a whole episode.
Yeah, I'm sure. You know, and Kevin Feige has talked about how they really do make these shows like they make movies. I mean, they're very cinematic experiences. So yeah, I was really happy with it. I really loved how we got the more personal side of these characters. I mean, you see what's going on in Sam's life, you see what's going on in Bucky's life. It totally makes sense based on where they were coming out of Infinity War and Endgame, and they've got some real personal stories to go through, in addition to the main flashy like plot versus the bad guys that they're setting up. So other thoughts on it, Bob?
Well, yeah, just like you said, we get to see the human element that you don't get to see, like in Endgame. You know, like there's not a whole lot of scenes in action movies of people getting dinner together or washing the dishes. There's usually more fighting aliens and saving the universe
Right,
instead of
right.
mundane problems like, hey, who's going to take the dog out, or whatever random chore you got to do.
Yeah, and we're also getting some indications of what the world is like a little while, not very long after Endgame, and the people come back from the blip. It does take place a little bit later in the timeline than WandaVision, I'll say, but not much. So. So that is interesting to see all that. So they did a lot with this episode, I think, because it was set up, but it was set up in a very, it was like a lot of times when shows or movies do exposition, and exposition is just like information that you need to know to understand the story, like they'll just drop it in a big monologue, or it'll be handled in a way that's maybe not that compelling. But I was very interested and plugged in throughout the whole episode, even in like the slower moments when they're delivering a lot of information, and they just do it very subtly, hints about what the world is like now and how that's affecting like the people that have come back, and how people that lived through the blip are reacting to the state of affairs now and stuff. And I found that really fascinating, and also shows me that they have a very clear idea what they're doing with the MCU moving forward. So how would you rate just the show just based on this first episode out of 10?
I got to give it a 9.
A nine.
It was fabulous. They almost immediately, it was paced very well, and almost
Yeah.
immediately they draw you in. And even if you haven't seen previous movies, they make you start to care about these characters. And that is always when you enjoy a show the most. Like when a character gets hurt or something happens to that character, you get that visceral emotion. You want to, cry like your best friend got hurt. When they are on top of the world and they win, you want to just stand up and cheer like you would like if your best buddy was in a football game and just scored the winning touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
You have that emotional ride with them because you care what happens to them.
Yeah, and this made me care. This episode made me care a lot more about Bucky and Falcon. And it's not like I didn't care about them before. I really liked those characters from the movies, but they had not gotten very much development.
Very, very minimal screen time. Yeah.
Sam had even gotten less development than Bucky, because Bucky was even in Captain America's first movie, and he had he was a major character in Captain America and the Winter Soldier, so we at least got had gotten some more from him from those places.
Right.
But yeah, I like that. So for me, you know what? I think I give it a 9 too. So, at least so far. It's a hell of a setup for a show. I mean, look, if you like Marvel movies and you like Captain America movies, you're gonna like this show, I think.
Absolutely, without a
you
doubt.
know, I mean, we haven't seen the rest of the episodes, but like based on everything the MCU has done so far, and even though WandaVision is a totally different kind of show, it at least gives you an indication of how seriously they're taking these shows and what they're doing with them. So
Yeah, there's definitely a vastly different flavor between this and WandaVision.
a vastly different flavor is absolutely right. So, okay, so we're gonna move on to heavy spoilers, everybody. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah, if you haven't
Spoiler
seen it yet,
alert.
scream and run now.
Yeah, scream and run now. Come back. Press pause. Maybe come back and listen or watch after you've watched it.
Yeah, watch the show
So,
now.
yes, absolutely. So, okay, so we have a few topics to get to on this, but like if I could just start at the beginning, because it starts off and he's like ironing this suit and putting it on. And I think you mentioned, and I've seen other people say online, that they thought like, oh, maybe he was going to like Steve's funeral,
Yeah.
which I didn't think, only because I really don't think that anybody's ready for that yet. Basically, even though Cap is retired and all that, like,
Well, I don't think Marvel cares if we're ready. I mean, just look at the snap. No one was ready for that. I've seen that movie 10 times and I'm still not ready for that.
I guess what I'm saying is I think that they would give it some kind of additional dramatic weight than for us to the first thing we see as like his funeral, right? Like I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up later and like, gives Sam some advice or something like that. But they're not just gonna have him like die off screen and then there be like a funeral and then that's all. Like that's just my opinion. But I just didn't think it was gonna happen because of that. But I mean, it's him basically getting ready. It seems like for this speech he's gonna give a little bit later. But then it goes into, and it's very short. This first little scene. And it ends, with him remembering when he told Cap, feels like it belongs to somebody else, and Cap's, saying it doesn't. And I think that just tiny little scene there at the outset really set up what his personal arc is going to be through the movie,
Yeah.
in a very, dramatic, emotional way. Now, then, of course, we get the big action set piece. And like I said, that opening scene was like nothing I've seen in a TV show. Definitely not as the opening scene. Normally you'd save something like that for a climactic
Yeah,
battle.
there's a build up. That's the climax.
Yeah,
That's
and in
the hey, how you doing?
yeah, and in a lot of like pilot episodes, which a lot of times are made before they know whether they're going to actually produce more episodes of the show, right? They make a pilot, they show it to the people at the studio or whatever, and they give it a green light or not. And so normally they're not going to spend that much money on a pilot either, like it just in regular type of a like primetime TV show. But this one, I mean, they knew they were going all out from the beginning, so they just put it right up there up front, kind of like you would expect maybe from a movie, right? An MCU movie. So I mean, we talked a little bit about that already without saying that's what was happening in the scene. But like, what were your like when you're watching this scene? What were your impressions and like how did it hit you? Was it good? Do you think it was overblown? Like what? How was it?
It does a good job at establishing that even though Falcon was the Avenger that didn't get a whole lot of screen time, he is in his own right a big damn hero.
Yeah.
He has the skills, he has the will to make it happen.
Right.
Without Thor, without Iron Man, without all the big heavy hitters, he can get it done.
That's a good point. That's a good point because we've mostly just seen him in action with the team, right?
Yeah, up until now he's been a background singer.
It was. I mean, he paired up with Captain America during Winter Soldier, and
Yeah.
then he kind of had that fight with Ant-Man during the first Ant-Man movie, which was great. But other than that, I mean, he really hasn't had a chance to shine on his own.
Right.
So yeah, that was nice actually, and it was fun too, because like there's that moment when he's like, he won't follow us, and then they look over, and then Sam had just like landed in the helicopter seat, and he's like, "Sup?" And
Yeah,
starts
yeah.
playing him.
Like, and imagine being one of those guys in that helicopter that they don't know what the Falcon's tech can do. You're sitting there like, oh, we got away. Oh,
No.
he's sitting right there.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So that was, I mean, we don't need to dwell on it too much, but that was like I thought it was a really fun action scene. I thought it was
It was.
interesting. I thought it was interesting they brought back that French villain character, Batroc, which had fought Captain America at the beginning of Winter Soldier on that ship,
Hmm.
if you remember. And the guy's not enhanced or anything, but he's like a famous martial artist or something, and he's tough, he's a good fighter, and so even Cap had to like actually try to take him down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas Falcon had a kind of a tough time, and he's kind of started getting his ass handed to him in a way.
Yeah,
Uh,
to took some damage. And that's one of the things Marvel does better than any other studio I've seen.
hmm.
2 minutes before that was the little comedic pause of, "Hey, how's it going?" And then they go from that to this really intense fight, and it doesn't feel like they broke pacing. Like it seems like that was just the natural progression of it all fit together the way it was supposed to.
It did, yeah. Marvel's really good at that, and I'm going to talk a little bit more later about why I think these movies are so successful. But it was fun. It was a really good action sequence, and I enjoyed it. So I want to talk a little bit about setting up the characters, which of course this episode spent the majority of its time doing, I think.
Yeah, anytime there wasn't a fight, they were setting stuff up.
I mean, it really takes its time with Sam and Bucky showing us where they're at in their lives. It's the kind of thing that a feature film wouldn't necessarily have time for, but we get that room to breathe in a TV show. And I would say, if all 6 episodes are 45 minutes long, that's like 4.5 hours of story. That's like 2.5 movies, basically worth of time.
Right.
So that's why I cannot understand. Well, it's not that I don't understand, but like I've heard people say, "Oh, it's only 6 episodes." Like, I'm angry. Like, why can't they do at least 10 or something? I'm like, well, I would like more also, but at the same time, you're also getting like way more than you would get out of a single film, right?
Yeah.
So
And these are characters that have been loved for decades. They could have 20 episodes and people would want more.
yeah, exactly. So, and I really enjoyed this look at like the everyday lives of these guys. And like we were saying, it's essential groundwork for everything that's to come. It's grounding us in this emotional realism that, as I've said before, is I think one of the big reasons that the MCU has been as successful as it has been. You know, did you find any of the setup boring, or were you, there for it like the whole way through?
Oh, I was eating that with a spoon. I loved every second. There were a few
Mhm.
things like just from being a science nerd kind of thing. Like Falcon needs a helmet. Like
Not
he's
just
doing all that
goggles
stuff. There's stuff blowing up all around him. Like he doesn't protect his head at all
from flying shrapnel
from
or
flying shrapnel, from all
whatever.
the explosions he's flying through, and like he's outrunning a missile, so he's doing a minimum 500 miles an hour and
Oof.
talking with his mouth open, with all
Right,
that.
good point. That I mean,
So you
I
know
have jumped out of an airplane before, and let me tell you, that wind
it's
is pretty
intense,
intense. Yeah,
and that's just free fall. I mean,
yeah,
he is propelled by a jetpack.
yeah. I think
That's
terminal velocity in free fall is like about 125 miles an hour on Earth, and so if he's going about 500 miles an hour, that's some serious wind in
yeah.
your face.
And the
So
dude on the ground can still hear him,
yeah,
and they're
you're
just
so
carrying on a casual conversation while he's catching up to the bad guys.
I can see that you're going to
Um,
be like the Neil deGrasse Tyson of this show. You're going to be pointing out scientific
Like, I mean,
inconsistencies.
I understand there has to be a minimum amount of suspension of disbelief because it's
Yeah.
sci-fi and it's comics, but there's a certain things like, okay, he has super wings, awesome, give him a helmet, come on.
But you still enjoyed it. I mean,
Oh,
even
I
though you
loved it. I
had
loved it. It was awesome.
yeah. Back to the emotional realism that we were talking about. Like, I think for Sam it's clearly he's going to get the shield back at some point, which we've seen in the trailers him using the shield, right? And I think it's also that he's got to like accept that he deserves it, or at least that it's his to use, right?
Yeah, and they even like while he's having a conversation with Rhodey, like I'm not the guy. They do a close up of the propaganda poster where it's like I
Mm.
want you.
Oh, it's
Like
pointing right at him.
it's pointing right at him. Like no, you are the guy. You may not feel like the guy, but you're definitely the guy.
Yeah, that was a really great piece of production design, like that you pointed out during our watch long because they just throw in things like that, and you noticed it. So and even if you don't notice it, I think it's functioning like on a subliminal level, a little bit. So that was nice. And to be clear, even though I think that's his journey to like get the shield back and realize that it's his and all this, I don't think he's ever going to call himself the new Captain America because he's been very clear about the fact that like there's only one Captain America, and that's Steve Rogers in his mind. And so even if he takes up the shield, he may become a symbol, but he's not going to call himself the Captain America.
Right.
I would be really surprised if that's what happens. I really don't think that's going to happen. With Bucky, his arc to me seems like they're setting up an arc of redemption, or at least of continuing to try to make amends and redeem himself. And like, clearly he's wrestling with telling Mr. Nakajima about how he killed his son and apologizing to him or whatever it is that he's trying to do. And the other part of his journey, I think, is just about healing and trying to find whatever his place is in the world, as Bucky rather than as the
Yeah, because I mean,
assassin.
he's like 100 years old, and for the vast majority of it, he has been in combat.
Oh
That's
yeah.
that's heavy PTSD. Like that, it's even a regular soldier who just makes a career in the military for you know the 15-20 years. They have a heavy burden to bear, but for 80 years of that, I mean, the fact that he hasn't just crushed under that emotional weight.
Yeah, I mean it's heavy, and that's why he's in therapy. Right? And I really enjoyed that therapy scene.
The therapy scene was good. She's almost scarier than him, and he's a super soldier assassin. Like
She
she
definitely
took nothing from him.
Oh yeah, she definitely went toe to toe with him,
Yeah.
in that conversation. And I think it was, very appropriate that she had been a soldier as well because, probably, any therapist that hadn't been a soldier probably had no business trying to like deal with him in that situation because how could they understand, right? The
Mhm.
kind of things that he's been through or begin to understand. So, and it's really so, very much like that initial short scene with Sam where, he's putting on the suit and all that and he hears the voiceover from Cap. I think this sets up his journey because at the very end, she says, these are good things. You have a pardon, you have your mind back, you're free, and he goes, to do what? I mean, that's the question that is going to be answered by the end of this show, I think. Or at least he's going to come a lot closer to answering it, by the end of this show. I would imagine. So
Yeah.
so I want to talk about how the Falcon and the Winter Soldier in this first episode like starts to set up actually like the future of the next phase of the MCU, I would think.
Oh yeah. Well, they say several times about what's the line they use? We need new heroes.
Yeah, that's what. So originally, Sam says that in his speech at the Smithsonian, right?
Yeah.
And he talks about how symbols really only get their power from, I'm paraphrasing, but symbols really only get their power from the men and women you know who give them meaning. And it's a beautiful speech. And Anthony Mackie, man, whew, that guy. I mean, I don't know if he's gonna win an Oscar for like this show because like that's not the type of material that is gonna get an Oscar, but he is a top-notch actor, and just the way like he can be subtle, he can be charming, he can break your heart, which he kind of did in the scene at the end where you just feel that betrayal, you know, you
If
just
there's any justice in the world, Anthony Mackie is going to be winning some awards.
yeah, yeah. So, and I mean, I think that it might even take that caliber of actor to invest us enough in these characters to make this show work as well as it does, and that's credit to Marvel and Kevin Feige for casting him. I don't know the exact people that like found him and cast him and all that, but he really makes this role. So he says that, and then you said they mention it more than once. I think the other time they mention is all the way at the very end in that scene where they unveil John Walker, the new Captain America, and they say something like that, and they're talking about how well there's heroes to defend the Earth, but we need one for this country, and so we have a new Captain America, and it's like it's funny because they're saying kind of superficially the similar things as he did in his speech, but they're also kind of twisting it around backwards because instead of saying, well, there's only one Captain America, and we need new heroes, it's like we need a new Captain America, which is in a way a perversion of what Sam was saying in his original speech, and you could see the betrayal on his face there.
Yeah, there was definitely some betrayal there, and there's no way around it. He gave up the shield for a specific purpose, and then they took the shield and twisted it.
Yeah, yeah, and I have to imagine that there might have been some kind of bait and switch involved there with like some politicians in the background going like, can't wait to I don't know, get it from this black dude and create our new committee approved Captain America or whatever. But I think the line "we need new heroes" that Anthony Mackie said, or Sam says in the beginning, is really a foreshadowing of what's to come. Because think about who we're going to get. We're getting, in terms of new characters coming to the MCU, right? We're getting a new Hawkeye, apparently, in the new Hawkeye show, the Kate Bishop Hawkeye character. We're going to be getting She-Hulk. She's got a whole show. Moon Knight, who's going to be played by Oscar Isaacs. And I don't know if you're aware, but She-Hulk, they cast Tatiana Maslany, who was many of the main characters in that show Orphan Black. So she's extremely talented, and she's also a little dainty woman. So it'll be interesting to see her as She-Hulk, as like the hulking She-Hulk. That'll be cool. And we're also getting Miss Marvel. We'll probably be getting some Eternals. And who knows what the fallout is going to be from some of these other movies that are coming up, if we're going to get some, new characters that we can't quite expect yet. So, it's just a little bit of foreshadowing, I think, when it's all said and done. But I wouldn't, we're going to talk a little bit later about characters we think might show up in the show. But yeah, so I think that's happening. And it's also laying the groundwork for the future of the MCU in the way that it's showing us the state of the world post Endgame, right? He said it's been a few months, he said, since the people returned, right? From what happens at the bank, you also get the sense that like society hasn't quite adapted to the return yet in a way. But what are your thoughts about how this is setting up the future of the MCU in this next phase?
As many times as they've mentioned in the one 45-minute episode, we need new heroes. Even if it's just superficially, they've got to be introducing a lot of the next phase's characters, and just sort of getting people excited for that to start.
Yeah, laying the groundwork a little bit, greasing the rails. Are there any particular of the new shows and things coming up that you're really excited to see, or you just kind of have a general level of excitement for that stuff?
I mean, it right now I've heard so little about what they're doing with all of those.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I liked the She-Hulk comics back in the day, but how they're going to do a series treatment here. What are they going to do with that character? And it's the same question with all of the series and movies that are coming out that are going to be solo adventures. What aspect? Like, WandaVision was a complete shock. With
I've never seen anything like that before. I mean,
with how they spun that. So, is this going to be like a reintroduction to those characters and like retelling their origin story, or is it really going to jump in where the character's already established and they're going to be we're already in this world, catch up?
So this is actually a really good transition into talking a little bit more about the state of the world post-Endgame, post-Blip. So I just want to talk about that real quick. Now, we are, I think, getting more about the state of the post-Blip world than we did in WandaVision. Which, despite like the crazy stuff that happened in it, was pretty self-contained, I think. So like when half the population reappeared after 5 years, the world did not suddenly break into a rendition of Kumbaya and everybody, start holding hands. We're finding, these are the things that we're finding out. Resources became scarcer. The banker said that with everybody just showing up, things have gotten tight. Where before the world was, on some level at least, united in grief, now those who were lost have returned, and there's more division. Division between those who lived through the bleak half-decade of the blip and those who never experienced it because they literally did not exist during that time. Even a few months after the return, which is where we are with Falcon and the Winter Soldier now, it's clear society's institutions have not adapted to account for the reappearance of half the world population. I mean, again, look at how the bank refuses to give Sam and his sister just a small business loan.
Well, yeah, but after 5 years, the world had just gotten used to half of the population being missing.
Oh, I'm not
They had
saying.
just gone through that therapy and started to heal from that, and then
Oh
all of a
yeah.
sudden, boom, everyone's back
Oh,
just as quickly as they left.
I'm not saying it would be easy to adapt. I'm not saying they're
Yeah,
just being, I'm not saying they're doing it out of malice. I'm just saying like they haven't, society hasn't been able to completely adapt back to this yet, right? And
well,
it's
yeah, and
because
what is Falcon take place like 3-4 months after the return,
he
something
said
like that.
in his speech, he said it's been a few months. So I take that to mean three, about 3 months. And it's like, because even though he literally didn't exist to have a job and an income, like they're not giving him a loan because he didn't have an income. It's the kind of institutional indifference and lack of concern with the public good that I think a lot of people can relate to, particularly people of color, because I don't think that's a thing you can ignore with this show. I mean, it's not like they're making it super overt, but it's just a part of our society. That's all. And then we have the Flag Smashers, who are apparently this reactionary group who have decided to use violence, theft, crime to try and return the world to a trajectory similar to where they saw it was during the blip, with like, I guess, less international division. People are kind of united in grief, I guess. Like we still have a lot to learn about both this group and like where, what's been going on in the world. But this is just kind of how I see the state of the world post Endgame, like where we are now. But what are your thoughts?
A lot of that it's kind of too early to tell. Marvel is fairly famous for making you think you're headed down one path, and then like, whoops, we're going over here.
Cough,
So,
cough, Ralph
I
Boner.
I I would after only 45 minutes of the story hesitate to say, well, this is where we're headed because
Yeah,
who
yeah.
knows, man. But you see so much of Falcon and Bucky's, inner turmoil, the emotional state of them and the emotional state of their family. It seems to me like the bad guys, this is how they're dealing with their emotional state. Like they have felt strongly enough that the world was better before the return of the people that disappeared in the blip, that they've become violent and started terrorist tactics to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, that's not something you do. You wake up on a Saturday morning, I think I'm going to overthrow the government today. Something has to really strongly motivate you to go do that.
oh yeah, oh yeah, and it's interesting. You never know exactly what they're gonna pull from the comics and how they're gonna adapt that to the screen. But they certainly do pull elements from the comics. And actually, in the comics, now I haven't read a lot of these comics, but I did some research about it, and Flag Smasher was a character in the comics. Now we have a group called the Flag Smashers. And Flag Smasher was this guy named Carl Morgenthau. And now, apparently, in the show, they have adapted that character. She's Carly Morgenthau, and she's played by an actor. She was in some of the trailers for the show. She's played by an actress named Erin Kellyman, and she was actually the leader of the pirates or whatever in Solo, the a Star Wars story, the Solo movie. She was
Okay,
like the leader of the renegade pirates or whatever. So when you see her face, if you are like, where did I see her before? That's where it was.
that was where.
And yeah, and in the comics, this character was like the son of a diplomat, and originally was kind of trying to follow in his father's footsteps of like learning about diplomacy, and I think he went to like Columbia. But then like his father was killed, and Carl went down sort of this path of radicalization until he decided that he had to use violence to uh, uh, sometimes these villains like ideas don't make a whole lot of sense rationally, but like the idea was, oh well, we have to break down the borders between nations so that people can be like one people, and all of this. But then I guess he decided to be a terrorist to make that happen. That never quite makes sense to me, but so I think there will probably be some parallels in the character to the Morgenthau from the comics. But you know, I don't know. But I thought that was interesting, the way, you know, what we know already about adapting that. But yeah, I mean, you know, per your comments, I think that just goes to show that what has happened to the world has been so impactful that it's not surprising that you have people feeling very strongly about it and going out and doing some pretty radical things. I mean, is that
Yeah,
kind of what you're saying? Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. The world is in a strange place, right? Because on one hand, people are back, and that's great, except in a way it's created more division in a sense, right? With this, you know, you have these flag smashers. And what did the army intelligence guy who's friends with Sam say? He's when he was talking in the beginning about the groups, he was like, "Oh, there's worse groups, right? You know,
Yeah,
but
I
these
mean,
ones."
if these seem to be, you know, ones with superpowers.
Yeah, I mean, clearly at least one of them has superpowers, right? Is
Yeah,
enhanced.
he punts that cop like he's a football.
After he jumps out of like a third story building and just
Yeah,
like brushes himself off, and you know, so that's interesting. So like that's obviously, you know, part of how Falcon and the Winter Soldier are going to get involved, right? Because
yeah.
those people are enhanced, and it makes me wonder how many people in the Flag Smashers are going to be enhanced. Like I wouldn't be surprised if the Carly Morgenthau character ends up being enhanced also, but I would probably say it's got to be a small number of people. It's not like an army of like enhanced super soldiers. It's probably like one or two people, I would think. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, it would be hard to envision. You know, you basically have two main characters, Falcon and Winter Soldier, and if they all of a sudden had to fight 800 Steve Rogers, there's not much of a show. They lose.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Um, Now, like some reasonable, like, you know, let's say there was a core of like half a dozen of the, you know, quote unquote evil super soldiers. Because like when you're on the wrong side, you don't think, oh, I'm being an evil guy today. You think you're right. You believe to your
Yeah.
core you're right.
Everybody
You
thinks
know,
they're the good guy, you
yeah,
know.
you're always the good guy in your own story.
Yeah.
Um,
And we're gonna get that conversation between like Carly or somebody in the Flag Smashers and Falcon and Winter Soldier. I guarantee it'll be like,
a virtual guarantee. Yeah,
yeah, they're gonna lay out their philosophy. You know, Sam will be like, but you're going about things the wrong way, even if you have good intentions. You know, it'll be
yeah,
something like that. Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit about this new Captain America, John Walker, which, by the way, he's played by the actor named Wyatt Russell, who was in Lodge 49, and he was Corporal, what's his name, in Overlord, if you've seen it. It's like the J.J. Abrams produced World War II zombie movie, Overlord. So, so he's not bad, but I did just want to punch him in the smug little face when he came out as the new Captain America. And,
yeah. I mean,
and
he's all about the propaganda. That's just
yeah, now in the comics, John Walker was originally like a smug new Captain America who was actually kind of a villain in that he embodied a kind of negative patriotism. He would like stage fights for publicity. He really wanted to be a hero. He worked for some sleazy politicians. And he was ultimately installed as the new Captain America through like the plotting of Red Skull, actually, which which is interesting. So it kind of makes me wonder if there's going to be like a lingering like Hydra connection or something. That might be a theory, a bridge too far, but he did become more heroic as time went on. But originally, he was created by Mike Grunwald, who described him as, quote, someone who embodied patriotism in a way that Captain America didn't, a patriotic villain. And continuing with the quoting him, basically, I just wanted to do the opposite of Steve Rogers. Okay, Steve Rogers is a poor northern urban boy, so I'll make a guy from rural middle class South. Cap is now old, so this guy will be a real young up and comer. Cap has lofty ideals, so I'll make Super Patriot be more realistic and more pragmatic. So I put together his background and character traits by playing the opposite game. So just thinking about it that way alone, like this character was literally created as like the opposite of Steve Rogers. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's interesting. Now we don't know much about the MCU version just yet, except that he seems to be enthusiastic about taking on the mantle of Captain America. And personally, seeing his introduction by that politician, whoever he was, felt just like some of the hollow performative stuff that you see like politicians doing all the time. But more than that, it felt like a betrayal. And I think a lot of that feeling comes from Sam's story and and Anthony Mackie's great performance, both his speech at the beginning that we talked about when he
Hmm.
hands over the shield to the Smithsonian and his reaction while watching the news conference. So like what do you think about this new Captain America and all that?
Well, it like a lot of things in the beginning, it's going to depend on how they play it. But we as viewers are emotionally invested because we see Steve Rogers put that shield in Sam's hand. Like
Yeah.
he tells him, "This is yours now. Here,
Most
take
people
it."
don't know that in the MCU.
Um,
Yeah.
so we are emotionally invested in, if anyone's going to wield it, it should be Sam. Now, they could, knowing that from the comics he's kind of you know paper cutout of Captain America and isn't really worth it. Maybe this guy is going to be a good guy. Maybe he wields that shield with honor and the terrorists
Yeah.
take him out.
I would
And
be
then,
surprised if he was like evil. You know what I mean? I would be surprised if he's like a legitimately evil character. I
well, like
tend
you
to
said with Hydra, that Hydra as an organization was destroyed. But anytime you're that extremist, there's always a few people left.
and even Bucky said in his therapy session, like, that part of his thing where he's making amends is like that politician who he put in power through whatever Hydra contracted him to do was like still abusing her power. And so he
Yeah,
made sure that she went to prison. So we know that there's still, yeah, Hydra got found out as being part of S.H.I.E.L.D. They were kind of broken up, but those people are still out there. Cut off one head, two more sprout in its place, right?
right.
So they're still out there, right? Yeah. Sorry, continue. Did I interrupt you?
No,
The
that
point.
was that was the point I was making.
Okay.
Like, even if you destroy the organization, there's those individuals who, and maybe those individuals are starting this new trouble. Maybe
Yeah.
they're behind this new group.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we failed, but maybe you should,
Yeah.
get in
I
there and
mean,
mix it up.
I would be really surprised if this guy John Walker is actually Hydra. I don't think that's the case. He might be a smug, basically, but he's not. I don't think he's like necessarily an evil person. He might have a big ego. He might be focusing on the wrong things. He might this, that, or the other. We still have a lot to find out about this character, right? But I would be surprised if he's like straight up like supervillain evil. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like, ha ha ha. Like, I don't think they're going to go that far with it.
At the
Um,
same time, when he came out, oh man, I really
yeah,
did
you
just
just
want
want to punch him right in the throat.
to. Mm,
Yeah,
no, that like that's not because I'm on the same page as Sam in that like that shield like there's only one Captain America. That's the page that I'm on with Sam, and
yeah.
it's not him. So I mean, I would like to see Sam accept it and pick up the shield, which one imagines he will do eventually. But I
Based on the
again,
trailer, yeah.
based on the trailer. But again, like I don't think he's gonna call himself Captain America. And even if I wouldn't even be surprised if it's like a situation where he's in action and then he's like in an interview, he's holding the shield, and somebody's like, "So are you the new Captain America?" And he'll be like, "No, man, there's only one Captain America, but I'm gonna help his legacy live on the best way I can." So that's kind of more like where I see Sam's character is coming out in all this. But okay, so unless you have another topic that we should get into here real quick, then I think we should move on to our theories and predictions, although those might be in short supply at the moment, having just gone through just this one little episode, right?
Yeah.
But did you have any? Is there anything we missed? I think that you wanna get into really quick.
I don't really think we missed anything. there, like you said, this episode was either action sequence or emotional interplay, setting up a lot of things.
Emotional
Um,
interplay. You just reminded me. If we could speak briefly about Bucky's date, because I think we only
yes.
talked about that in the watch along. So, like, first of all, he was not planning to be on a date, right? That just
Well,
kind
yeah.
of happened, and God, I wish that would have happened to me back in the day. Um, but I started to really like that bartender woman when she pulled out an old box of Battleship, which I used to play many a time when I was a kid. It was just funny because you see, like, you don't realize at first, like, exactly why he's having such a hard time with the conversation once she starts talking about Mr. Nakajima. You
Hmm.
don't understand yet the reason why that is. But I found it interesting, that it was like this guy who has been through so much is now trying to do normal things like dating, right? And it's just so hard for him, on
Right.
top of which simple questions are really tough to answer in a way that's not going to just like frighten people like, how old are you? 106
Yeah.
years
Well,
old.
they in an earlier scene where he's out to lunch and they're talking about haven't danced since 1943.
Uh,
It feels like,
yeah.
like they're pointing out like he hasn't been on a date in 80 years. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Um,
and he's talking about playing pinochle, which that's that's not a common game these days,
no,
to
no.
put it mildly.
I mean,
So
yeah. So, and
they're
then,
really driving home that this is an old man.
well, he's a man out of time in a way, like Steve was,
Yeah,
and on top of that, he has all of this like sordid history that he's trying to get past. And then she even asks him, she's like, "Why the gloves?" He's got to come up with it. Because do you say on the first date, "Oh, well, I have this mechanical arm
yeah.
that was
He's like,
made in,"
oh, and he plays it off like, oh, it's poor circulation.
right?
Not because I don't have veins. You know,
Right. So I just found that to be a really fun scene, but at the same time, it gets a little bit dark and it gets pretty emotional because you find out later that the reason he had such a problem with the end of that conversation was because he literally murdered Mr. Nakajima's son.
right? And at that point, that scene gets way darker. Like it starts
Yeah.
off dark and somber, and you're like, he's really upset, and he's really sad, and you don't know why, but you kind of feel for the
And
guy.
it's like he's coming to this guy's house or apartment who seems to be like his only friend. And I
Right.
was thinking, me, because until that scene, I was thinking this is just somebody he knew back in the day, right? But it's not, because then he sees the picture, and you're like, oh, it was that kid that he killed. And
Yeah, and
flashback.
you're sitting there like just sort of,
Yeah, and
you're just stunned into silence
and
at
it's
that point.
like, you get the impression that he went there to finally tell him and get whatever that closure is to make amends, but then also realizing you're not actually going to make amends by destroying this guy, in the middle of the night at his door,
Yeah,
basically,
this
emotionally.
90-year-old man at midnight,
Yeah.
just crushing what's left of his life.
So I think really the pretty much the end point of his personal arc in this show is going to be figuring out a way to deal with that. Whatever form that's going to take, and we can make predictions and stuff, but that's what I see for him. Okay, so that stuff was all fun with Bucky and emotional, but yeah, let's get into our predictions and theories. As I mentioned, I don't think we might be a little bit thin on those right now because we've only just seen the
Yeah.
first episode, right? But
Um, One thing that has me kind of the wheels turning.
okay,
Marvel doesn't seem to do anything accidentally. Like in WandaVision, there was a scene where they flashed through a bunch of license plates really fast, and the number on one of the license plates was Stan Lee's birthday.
yeah,
So no minor detail is above examination.
exactly.
And they in a 40-minute episode spent way longer than you think they should have on Unique's name and his story about his name. Where's he going to pop back up? Because if he doesn't pop back up at all in the next 5 episodes, that was a bunch of wasted time, just
Right,
playing in that
for
dude.
like a little joke that was
For
sort of
for
half
yeah,
funny. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I could easily see him coming back. But as to what kind of a role he might have, who knows? But I mean, that's a good point. It's like that's why everybody's always doing crazy theory crafting because we know that Marvel will drop those hints in there, and that's why like during WandaVision, everybody was like had all these like really crazy theories. Some of them came true, most of them didn't. So that's always the danger. And then of course they gave us the like hardcore like theory trolling of casting the guy who was Quicksilver in the Fox X-Men movies, and then him end up being Ralph Boner.
yeah,
Actually, there's more to be said about that maybe, but not on an episode about
right,
Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But just that's all just to say that like this is why we're always crafting all these theories.
right.
For me, one of the more interesting ones, or maybe not the most interesting one, but one of the more interesting ones for me is like, where is Steve? What's going on? I actually think that this is probably a case of don't overthink it. Because, like, I love that scene in the beginning when Falcon is meeting with his buddy in the military, and his buddy's like, "So, there's a rumor going around that Steve is on the moon. Did you guys like fly him to the moon?" And I love Anthony Mackie's face when he reacts that he's like, "Nah." He didn't take him to a secret moon base. On the other hand, if it turns out that he really is on the moon, that's like something they could do with sword and all that.
Like at the very end of episode 6, there's this, Steve Rogers on the moon base,
like, getting his rejuvenation therapy,
flipping through channels on The Simpsons.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't that be hilarious? I don't think
it would. It would. That would be. So, not to go full tinfoil hat.
Oh, please do.
But the one other theory I have, theory, prediction, hope, dream, whatever you want to call it.
All right.
So this is Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and there's a shield of Captain America floating around. And we see Falcon wielding the shield in trailers. But what if at the end of the day he's not the one who truly takes up the mantle? What if that shield ends up with Bucky, and Bucky is the new Captain America? Because he's no longer the Winter Soldier. Like, that part of his life is done. And in one of the opening sequences, Hidden Therapy, he's putting the Winter Soldier to rest. What if he puts the Winter Soldier to rest and becomes the new Captain America?
I mean, that is a theory that I've heard, and that would be interesting. I just tend to think they're not going to do it because of, at least in the MCU, who Bucky is, because he literally was an assassin for like the Soviet Union, and he's mentally I mean, he's gotten the brainwashing stuff taken care of, but he's still unstable. And plus, Cap decided to give the shield to Sam. So for those reasons, I think that that's more unlikely. However, I would not be surprised if he does end up wielding the shield in, maybe cooperatively with Sam, or maybe he just ends up having it for a little while because of circumstances, during an action scene or something.
Oh, I think that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah. But, he does have, like, his metal arm is made out of vibranium now, though, too. So,
yeah.
Like, don't underestimate that either. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets his hands on it. I just don't see him, like, keeping it and, like, taking on the mantle of Captain America, I guess. But that is, I mean, I can't rule it out because I don't know what's going to happen.
Right. Well, like in the comics, that's the thing. There's been so many people have taken up that mantle over the years. Maybe we'll have a female Captain America.
There is,
when all is said and done.
There is in the comics a female Captain America.
I know.
And her name is America. Her first name is America. I can't remember her last name. But she's also from,
there was a rumor of Peggy's niece coming in.
Oh, she is. She was in the end credit sequence, if you noticed.
I missed that. She was in there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sharon Carter. Yeah, she's Agent 13. Yeah, she's going to be in it. I think she's even been like just like blink and you miss it in like one of the trailers. But I mean she's been confirmed to like be cast for the show. So plus I mean that just makes a whole lot of sense, right? Is like she's going to be there. Now I would, if we're making predictions and theories, I would guess that she's going to show up once Sam decides to dip his toes into things that maybe like, the governments of the world don't want him to dip his toes into with regard to the Flag Smashers, right? Because like if you're a superhero, it has to be like sanctioned and like I don't know, like I'll have to look and see if they've put up like the actual text of the thing online somewhere, but I don't know what like all the rules are exactly. But I would assume that she's still working for like the CIA or something, right?
Yeah.
Plus, we don't know whether she blipped or not, do we? Do we know whether she
No.
blipped or not? I
We
don't think that's
I
been.
don't think that's been. Yeah.
I don't think it was established on screen, and I don't remember seeing her face on the. Remember in Endgame at the beginning when they were putting up like the pictures of the people who were missing? I don't remember them putting her up there. That doesn't necessarily mean anything,
Well, yeah,
but
because a few billion people blinked and they didn't show that many pictures. So
right, exactly. So, but I mean, I think she's definitely going to show up. I do think if we're talking about characters who might show up, I do think there is a decent chance. I'm going to give it over 50%, like maybe 60% chance, 65% chance that we see Old Man Steve. And I think, okay, I was saying before, like, let's not overthink the what is Steve doing thing, because I think he's just retired and he's like living out his life. And his, like, Sam and the others just decided to, like, not really go public with that information, to just let him, like, have his life. Because he's literally 100 years old, from his, I mean, he's done some time traveling, but, he's, like, subjectively, he's, like, over 100 years old. And, like, what's he
well,
going to
yeah,
do?
the
He's an
one
old
fight
man.
with
I mean, he's retired.
the French martial arts dude, like he barely won that fight in his
Mm-hmm.
prime.
Mm-hmm. I don't know
Oh,
if
it
I'd
was
say
a close
barely,
fight.
but he
I
did
mean,
have to
it
like
wasn't
make.
an obvious like Captain America just went and won. There was definitely a battle there.
Oh yeah,
So I think
yeah.
100-year-old Steve would
It
get
definitely.
beat with his own cane.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, he's in
Oh
great shape
yeah,
for being like
I'm not
105
in that
years
good a
old
shape
or
now.
whatever, but he's not.
Because he's Captain America. I mean,
Yeah,
super
but he's not.
serum. But
Right. But he's not, he's not to the point where he's,
yeah, he's not
battling
an alien fighting
aliens
shape.
and, all of that stuff. Right, exactly. So I also think there is a chance. I think it's a low chance, but I think there's a chance we'll actually get to see Jennifer Walters, who is the real person name for She-Hulk. And I only say that because, A, she's got a show coming up. B, she's been cast. And C, that character's occupation is lawyer for superheroes.
Yeah, I would say almost certainly she'll come in.
So if Sam and Bucky are getting up to some superhero shenanigans, as they undoubtedly will, and if this is unsanctioned by whatever body is in control of enforcing, the Sokovia Accords, then they might need a little, legal help. So I don't think she would play a huge role. I think it might just be pre She-Hulk transformation. Jennifer show up and be like, "Hey, I heard you needed some representation, in this matter." Something like that. It might even, might even be something in like a post-credit scene or something. Probably not, but I'm going to give it maybe a 20% chance for She-Hulk to show up, or pre-She-Hulk.
I'm going to say
Jennifer,
70% chance
Walters.
that she shows up. Yeah.
Really?
Okay. There's too many reasons for her to show up, even for just a second.
See, that's what I thought about Doctor Strange in WandaVision. Spoilers for WandaVision. That's what I thought. Like, I thought, like, how does he not show up, at least at the end? But he didn't. So, they're going to keep the story very focused on Sam and Bucky, I think. But I really would like to see her show up as just like a cameo, just like a court hearing or something. But okay, you're giving it a 70%. I'm giving it a 20%. We'll see how this goes. Are there any other characters you think might show up?
It's hard to say at this early stage as more of the plot unfolds. Yeah.
It really is. That's why I said we're going to be kind of thin on some predictions, but because let's just think about for a second where the world is in terms of what has happened to the Avengers. Tony, he's dead. Cap, Steve, He's retired. He's over 100 years old. He's not in alien fighting form, as you said. Thor is off in space, like
Doing
trying
space
to
stuff,
like
yeah.
deal with his, grief and space stuff, right? And he's got a movie coming up. Wanda is now that we know that happens prior to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, chances are she's still in that, again, spoilers for WandaVision, she's in the freaking wilderness at the base of that mountain, which is probably Mount Wundagore from the comics. She's, focused on learning about the Darkhold and, probably like finding her kids, etc. And we have this whole new slate of superheroes that are coming up in these new shows and things. And I don't think there's a reason for most of them to show up. But I think that if there is somebody who would show up, it would probably be Jennifer Walters. Like, I doubt Hulk himself is going to show up. But that's also another connective tissue with Jennifer Walters, right? Like, she's Bruce Banner's cousin. That's the idea with her character. And so it could be a situation where, like, well, Bruce found out that you're in some hot water and he gave me a call. He's occupied right now. But here I am, and I'm gonna make sure you like don't go to jail for like saving the world again, type of thing. So okay, so beyond that though, do you have any other theories or predictions about what's going on, what might go on? Now we know that Baron Zemo is going to be in this show because he was in the trailers, right? And actually, there is a shot from the trailer where he's facing off with Bucky, and Bucky like takes his gun and dumps out all the bullets. And that actually makes a little bit more sense to me now, given the therapy scene, to where I think he's going to be trying to stick to the 3 rules as they go through. I have a feeling they're going to break the don't break any laws rule.
And don't hurt anybody. So Bucky's going to try to subdue and arrest rather than, oh, I'm done with you, and shoot everyone in the face.
Right. Right, exactly. And I really do look forward to the next moment when he like takes down a baddie and he's like, "My name is James Buchanan Barnes and I'm here to make amends." Like that was so hilarious in the car
and
scene,
it's so unexpected. I think they've had that joke. Like the first time they whipped it out, it was really unexpected, and you get this big surprised guffaw out of it. But I don't think it's going to be like a running gag throughout the series.
Yeah, it might happen like one more time.
Maybe at the end, like the final battle, they finish it off. They finally get the guy down, and they've won. And then I'm here to make amends.
Right. Or maybe he does that with Baron Zemo or something. Like, who knows? But you're probably right. It's not going to be a running gag, but maybe like get like a little tiny bit more mileage out of it. I would predict that we're going to get at least a couple more big action set pieces through the series. And now it's a 6-episode series, right? I would be surprised if every single episode has like a huge action sequence like we got at the beginning of this one. But there will be some action. I just think in terms of like the really big.
Okay, well then, let's put it on the table. Predictions. Action sequences longer than 30 seconds. Right. How many of them will we have in the next 5 episodes?
Longer than 30 seconds? Is that the line of demarcation that we want to use? Like, let's separate it this way. How many big action sequences that are more than just like basically a fist fight?
I think.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, even the most normal guy, who's Falcon, has super tech. I don't see too many normal fist fights happening.
Okay, so beyond, let's say beyond a minute.
Beyond 1 minute, how many
a minute
big fight sequences?
I'm going to say...
You think in the next 3? 5 episodes, only 3 big action sequences? What are you smoking?
Yeah.
I'm
not saying there's not going to be action, but like I'm thinking of like superhero level, like that scene we got where he's flying through the air, like saving that guy, like up to that level, maybe like 3 more, but there's still going to be action. There's going to be gunfights. There's going to be fist fights. There's going to be like
7
of the big action sequences. That's
they
more
had 2
than 1
in this
per
episode. One of them was a flashback, but they still had 2 this episode.
Oh, you're also counting the Bucky
scene.
flashback thing too, right? Yeah, wasn't quite to the
It would
level
hard
of
to
the
be that
flying through
level,
the skies type stuff,
but
but I take
it
your
was
point.
big. I mean, he
Yeah, I
punches
take
through a
your point.
wall and
Yeah.
vanishes this dude. I mean, it was he takes out like half a dozen
Okay. All
people and
right.
does an assassination. I'm saying that qualifies as big fight
All
scene.
right. Well, okay. Okay. Well, then I'm gonna say it's gonna average 1 to 1.5 per episode. Then I guess. Because it's not like we're not gonna get action in every episode. It's the Falcon and the
Yeah.
Winter Soldier. That's their thing, you know. Um, yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna say if they're averaging 1 per episode, you know, that's gonna be like 1.5. So we have 5 more episodes. So God, you made me agree with you now. Like 7. What? But I would say up to the level of that first like aerial battle thing, probably only 3 more of like to
I'd
that
say to that extreme level, 5.
with like all the VFX. Really? Okay. Okay. So for that level, you're saying 5. I'm saying 3. All right. Let's count it out. Not counting. That's
Yeah.
from this point onward. So okay. All right. I'm game for that. Okay. So let's give it some stakes. If you're right, name your
I was
price.
just gonna gentleman's bet, but now you're going all out on this.
Yeah, let's give it to. Okay, I'll say if I'm successful, you have to start watching the Clone Wars, Star Wars:
All
The
right,
Clone
fine.
Wars. I know. It's
Okay,
so
and
all right. Give it some teeth.
you have to watch Lower Decks. Yeah,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Star Trek Lower Decks. All right. We'll talk about this
I
another
know.
episode. I've been resistant to watching
Yeah.
that show, but okay, fair enough. Okay. All right. So that's the bet, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see how that goes. Oh, I forgot to mention that there's also an Ironheart show coming, which, if you're not aware of Ironheart, she is a student at MIT who creates her own like Iron Man armor, and Tony Stark was, I think, in the comics, Tony Stark's like her, hero, type of a thing. She really looks up to him, and so she built her own armor. Her name's Riri Williams. And okay, so. And we're gonna get some Eternals. I don't know how and when the Eternals are gonna interact with like present day like Avengers, but it probably happen at like some big.
Well, yeah,
like,
the next
Avengers
big
movie
Avengers,
event, I would imagine.
Avengers and the next big horrible thing that almost kills the Earth.
Right. Well, we're leading up to Secret Invasion, which is going to be
Mhm.
a show with Samuel L. Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn, who plays Talos, who was like one of my favorite parts of the Captain Marvel movie. He's amazing. But anyways, yeah. So I think that wraps it up for my predictions right now. I'm gonna bet that Cap is not on the moon. I'll just restate that one. Although it would be hilarious
It would
if he
just
actually
hanging
is
out,
on the moon.
having a soda, whatever.
Like, and honestly, I wouldn't put it past him. Like, that's one of those rumors that Falcon has to deny.
Yeah,
but
like he's helping set up the Shield moon base or something as an advisor.
Yeah.
I don't think so either. But it would be really hilarious if it was.
I think let's not overthink it. Like he's probably just like enjoying his life, like playing Pinochle. Yeah. But there we have it. I think that's going to wrap it up for today. So thanks everybody for watching or listening, if you're listening to our audio podcast. And thanks everybody for listening to and or watching Mecha Dragon. You can find us online at mechadragon.net. For the audio podcast, you can find us, on Apple Podcasts, Anchor, pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts. If you want to, reach out and let us know your thoughts on this stuff, we would love to hear that. Just email us at mechadragonshow@gmail.com. Bob, is there anything you'd like to add
I think that's
before
all
we
for
sign
me.
out?
Thanks for joining us while we go down the rabbit hole with our nerd selves, and hope to see you again next week.
All right. Take care, everybody.